What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frownfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it.
This is episode 66 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Frownfelter. We all understand about the importance of training, what training does and what training is. And without training, we wouldn't be who we are or be able to do what it is we do. And that goes for, I guess, across the board as far as, teachers or plumbers or construction workers, police officers, firefighters, whatever, veterans, active duty military folks that are on the front line. Everybody has to train at some point to learn how it is to do their job and do it correctly. And not only do it correctly, and then I guess surpass that and start doing better at that job. Now there's the University of Ottawa did a study, and they developed 5 main benefits of training. The number one was it retains employees. So retention is a major challenge for employers, but retaining strong workers can be achieved through career development. In fact, training and development has become so centralized within business that it is often used as a competitive advantage when hiring. Offering career development initiatives helps employees establish a sense of value within the company and fosters loyalty, ultimately resulting in increased staff retention and a 59% lower staff turnover rate. The second one was it develops future leaders. Targeting employees with the skills for future leadership can be vital in establishing a business for growth and evolution. Leadership talent can be acquired through new hires, or HR professionals can select current employees as managerial candidates. According to the Society for Human Resources Management, having professional development programs ensures an organization is focused on future business goals by preparing promotable talent. Number 3, it empowers employees. Leaders who feel empowered within the workplace will be more effective at influencing employees and gaining their trust. Consequently, those employees will feel a greater sense of autonomy, value, and confidence within their work. The SHRM, which we talked about before, which was the Society for Human Resource Management, defines employee autonomy as the extent to which an employee feels independent and can make their own decisions about the work they do. Number 4, it boosts workplace engagement. Finding ways to bolster the consistent engagement of employees can diminish boredom in the workplace, which left unchecked can create feelings of dissatisfaction and negative work habits. Regular training and development initiatives can prevent workplace idleness and in turn will help businesses establish regular reevaluation of their employees' skills and processes. Furthermore, it will influence company culture by instilling an emphasis on planning and can promote company analysis and planning as it requires employers to review existing talent and evaluate growth and development opportunities internally rather than via recruitment. In fact, Forbes measured empowerment and employee engagement in data from over 7,000 employees and found that employees who felt a low level of empowerment were rated with engagement in the low rankings of the 24th percentile, compared to those who felt a high level of empowerment and were in the 79th percentile. And number 5, it builds workplace relationships. Finally, providing opportunities for employees to explore new topics, refine their skills, and expand their knowledge can help your team members bond with each other. During these training and development sessions, they will tackle new challenges together. They can also learn and lean on one another for various learning opportunities by collaborating with colleagues who have specific areas of expertise. Research has shown that peer collaboration is actually their preferred method of learning. Learning from each other's strengths is not only or does not only lead to a more well-rounded workforce, but those bonds can also improve retention and engagement. So if you see these 5 benefits of just training alone, you're going to build all these different things. And these are all the same things that we talk about all the time as far as building relationships and figuring out, how you're going to uh, build each other up and help move everybody along. Because if we're focusing on the goal, we're going to be able to focus on that as opposed to always one person's ego getting ahead of everybody else. Focus on that goal, help each other, build each other up, and then you'll become better. You become better, you're going to have some buy-in because you're going to have some benefit whenever they're asking, hey, does anybody have ideas on how we're going to be able to accomplish XYZ? When that happens, that person will be able to say, yeah, I have some ideas. How about we do this? It turns out to be a great idea because of your training experience and everything else that you've done. Now you can take that and the whole team decides to implement your plan. Your plan is now being utilized, and you feel a sense of ownership in that. By using your plan, you're going to do it that much better. Had you not gone through the training and the experience in which you did, you wouldn't be able to provide that idea, right? So it kind of works full circle. The reason I'm talking about this today is because the importance of training is one of those things that we overlook a lot. And that's one of the things that we need a lot of, because when the situation is right there facing you in the face, when it's right there, we now get to the point where we can try to act on it. But if you get scared, if you get worried, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I can go back to training. And you can't go back to training. You can't go back to it because you can't go ask the questions of the instructor or whatever the case is. You are now faced with this issue. So your training is important. Your training has to be good, and your training has to be beneficial to you and your team. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up today is because I have somebody on the podcast today who is just that, a professional trainer. And this person, he trained law enforcement officers to help them save lives, advance their careers, and become experts. And they have several different ways in which they do it. He owns a company. He's the founder of the Savage Training Group. He's also a police officer. He's a lead instructor and a police sergeant. But today we have, if you talk to him, you talk to his family, they'd say, oh, that's just Scott. But you know what? He is more than that. And we're going to find out today how much more than that. So if you welcome to the show, Scott Savage, how are you, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me, Ken. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. I see you a lot. I'm on the various social media platforms I frequent, and always see that you have a positive persona. You have a positivity that you're always pushing out there and encouraging other people. And I think it's great to actually have that.
Yeah, I've been a cop for 24 years or 23 years, coming up on 24 years. Before that, I was a paramedic for a few years. Before that, I was an EMT. So since age 19, I've only worked in public safety jobs.
Uh-huh.
And if you ask me to recount all the negative things that have happened and all the terrible stuff that I've seen, it would take a while, to list all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
But, I think I retain a positive outlook because I really don't want to end up some sort of cynical, broken person that's mad at the world and is just always angry and suspicious of everybody. And not that I don't have reason to be, right? I've got plenty of fodder and plenty of background to back up feeling that way, but that's not how I want to live my life. And you said a second ago, well, here's his resume, but his family would just say, well, that's just Scott. Good. And I hope they do. And I hope they go, that's what he does for a living.
Right.
He's a cop and he's a trainer and he runs a training company, but that is an aspect of his life and certainly not his entire life. And I think if you retain outside friends, outside interests, maybe take your job very seriously, but not take yourself quite so seriously, perhaps that will allow you to remain positive in the face of let's face it, a lot of nastiness.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think we want to maintain our personage, the person that we are, because that's going to only assist in everything else that we do. But if we lose that humanity and lose that personage, what do we become? Something that's going to retire at some day. It's something that's going to it's that you're not going to be able to maintain, but your character and your person, who you are, you're going to be able to maintain. And I think that's an important thing that we always got to remember. And yet I think a lot of people do forget that sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. And
Yeah.
if I've been doing this job for a long time and my entire adult professional career is wrapped up in law enforcement, and that's how I plan to carry on the rest of my professional career in a law enforcement training capacity. However, if all of that were to end today, while it would be sad and tragic, and I would, grieve the loss of that, I have other, interests, and I have other aptitude that I can apply towards other things, and I would be okay. And I'm sure people, as do I, who've been police officers for a long time, and something's happened where either personally or professionally they faced some setback, and it has become devastating to them, and some of them have taken their own life
Mhm.
because there is no other thing to them other than this job. And so when the job ends, perhaps they're in trouble, perhaps they've you know been fired, or whatever. To them, they've already died, and so now they're going to finish the act.
Right.
and
Right.
and I just don't really want to view life like that. So I'm glad that you noticed that in the social media realm that I'm in. I think that you will find everything I put on there has at least a glimmer of hope. And I always use
Yeah.
words like, I would like to think this, or I'm hopeful of that,
Yeah.
because that's how I really feel. And police work is changing, and it's really, really difficult for people to be cops nowadays. And we can get into some of those, the why of that. But at the end of the day, I'm hoping that if have a small platform and I can talk to other cops, I want to share with them a hope and a path forward, and to maybe say, it's going to be okay. It's really difficult what we're going through right now, but here's kind of the path that we can still move forward and still enjoy the job. Because as much as people criticize us and feel like everyone's against us, that's just not the case. There's a lot of good people in the world who really enjoy having the police at their service, and they're big, big supporters of us.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And it's the media says one thing, but I think that's just a snapshot. I don't know if there's the depth in which they understand, like I said before, the personage of police officers and the guys and girls out there that really do the job and want to do it right and be the best they can be in the fact that they want to just help people, even though that's a canned answer during an oral board or something like that. That there's really people that want to help people. They want to see people do better. So so let's you talked about you've had you kind of give a little synopsis of your career, but let's go back even further. Who was little Scotty? Where did he grow up, and how did he grow up? What was his thing growing up? Did he like cowboys and Indians, or was he just a TV watcher?
Yeah, little Scotty was a little chunky kid who was
Yeah.
not good at sports and was really very shy. And the last thing you would have ever thought little Scotty would do would be to grow up to do public speaking, because I was scared of my own shadow, and just a shy kid, and grew up in sort of a lower middle class existence. Mom and dad worked very hard, and we were latchkey kids, and that whole thing.
Mhm.
And I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, which now everybody thinks of as tech. That's a very techy place. Well, when we grew up, it was all orchards.
Yeah.
Everything where all this techie stuff was all orchards, because it's California and anything grows here. And so we grew up playing in cherry orchards, and this was a big defense industry. And now it's very much become a techie kind of place. But I grew up being enamored with people who were bigger than life. And to me, those kinds of people were never sports stars. I was never a sports fan. I had no posters on my wall of sport, famous athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I really looked up to police officers and firefighters. And when I saw them go by in their vehicles, I would wave to them, and I just thought they were so cool. And then I remember watching a show when I was little called Emergency, about paramedics in LA. Then I got older and watched Rescue 911, and I just was enamored with that. And then, of course, all the cop shows. And, I never wanted to be a cop, but I did want to be a musician because I thought those guys were bigger than life too. And I was a drummer and still am, and grew up playing in rock bands and all that kind of stuff. But
Cool.
at about age 18, I sort of wanted to do something a little bit for other people, something I saw as being very, very important. And so I went to EMT school, and did that for a few years, and then sold my drum set and put myself through paramedic school and did that for a few years. And right about that time, the fire departments were starting to provide paramedic service in our area. And I didn't like the idea too much because I worked on an ambulance. I didn't like the idea too much of watching other people, standing in line and watching other people, firemen, playing paramedics, when that was what I was really dedicated to do for my whole life. And I was getting really, really good at it. And so I tried to think of what's a career that's similar to paramedicine, but that's noble, that's outside, that's physically challenging, intellectually challenging, that it can feel very good about. And police work seemed to be the natural go-to career.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that was sort of holding me back is that my grandfather was a police officer. He was a cop in Amarillo, Texas. And unfortunately, he was shot and killed in the line of duty in 1945. And my dad, his son, I just really wasn't sure how that conversation was going to go when I told my dad I'd like to become a policeman. Meanwhile, his dad was killed in the line of duty. And so I had a conversation with my dad about that and just said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. How do you feel about that? And my dad's response was, well, if that's what you want to do, you should do it, kind of thing. Because to be honest, he was a very emotionally unattached person because of the trauma he had suffered, right?
Wow. Yeah.
He was, I think, 10 years old in Amarillo, Texas. And he recounted the story, I think, once for me of seeing his dad walking to work and saying to his dad, will you play catch with me? And his dad said, no, I'll play catch with you when I come back from work. Because he was walking to go be a detective in Amarillo. And that was, he never came back from work. And so I don't think my dad is, being a little guy at 10, ever recovered from that. But
yeah,
much to his, credit, he didn't try to stop me from being a cop. And so in 1999, I applied at a few agencies and got picked up, and there started my professional career being a policeman, and have been doing that for 23 or 24 years. And it will slowly, that season of my life will slowly come to an end soon. And I'll retire and just run the law enforcement training company, the Savage Training Group, run that full time.
Right. So let me ask you, so while you were in school, were you kind of aimless? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do after school, whether I'm going to go into college or go to the military or do whatever, or did you have an inkling of what you wanted to do?
I had a huge aim until about freshman year of high school. I don't know that I knew what I wanted to do until freshman year in high school, which is the first time that I was playing drums, getting very good at it, and starting to play with other musicians. And by sophomore year, that's all I wanted to do. I got in a band with a bunch of guys that were really, really good, and we were starting to play out in clubs that we couldn't even get in the club at 21, so we had to sit in the back room until it was our turn to go on
right.
Play at 18. But after that, I was hooked, and I wanted to do nothing else other than be a musician. And in so much that I stopped going to school. I got kicked out of high school my sophomore year because they're like, you don't seem to go here anymore. And I had a less than 1.0 GPA. I had
Wow.
gone in on like a 99% on my entrance exam, and then now here I am academically failing. And so they kicked me out, and I had to go to a local public school after that, and somehow graduated. But you know, I was cutting school and playing in rock bands, man. That's all I wanted to do, and that really lasted until a year or two out of high school, and then kind of when I made the pivot to go into public safety. But really, really driven about music as a young guy.
Right. Were the gigs just drying up or whatever? Were you just saw this is what I want to do more so than anything else. I want to go into actually helping people.
Yeah, I think it really, at 19 years old, 18 years old, or whatever it was, we were at a position where if we were going to go farther, we would need to move to LA or go, really pursue that. We had recorded demos
Mhm.
and done stuff like that in the studio, but it had gotten to be not fun anymore. It had
Oh,
gotten to be a lot of infighting within the band.
oh,
It was sort of seedy, playing in the clubs were kind of seedy.
sure. Yeah.
Our engineer, when we were recording in the studio, was doing lines of coke off the console. It
Sure.
was just kind
Of
of
course.
it was a lot, and it just didn't feel right anymore.
Right.
And I kind of just wanted to unplug. And then I was like, I really want to do something that's bigger than myself and really, really important. And this isn't feeling that right now.
Mhm.
And so while I still play drums just as a hobby, that I really just wanted to go. Once I caught the bug, the public safety bug, there wasn't anything else I've ever wanted to do, and that's going on since I was a kid now.
Right. Right. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool that, at least you were able to find that and see that and it hooked you. It caused a stir in your passion or whatever to say, hey, I really enjoy doing this and I'm getting okay at it once you
Yeah,
started getting into it. So you go to EMT school. Were you able to get onto an ambulance right away or as soon
yeah,
as you got out?
yeah. I put myself through EMT school and then got hired with an ambulance company doing at the time, interfacility transfers is really what EMTs do, taking patients from one hospital to the next. But I learned the ropes and I kind of learned the basics. And every now and then we would have some, crisis develop that we got to go on. But then
Mhm.
while I was working as an EMT, I sold my drum set to afford the paramedic school, and I put myself through there. So I was working full time as an EMT and then going to school full time as a paramedic student. But when you're young, you can do that, right? You don't need any
Right.
sleep and you can just do whatever. That would kill me now if I did that.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, and that got me into being a paramedic. And then I got picked up to work on a 911 ambulance answering 911 calls.
Mhm.
And man, that was awesome. It was so exciting, especially for a young guy. You're driving lights and sirens everywhere and literally dealing with life and death every day.
Right.
And that really gave me a leg up when it was time to become a cop because they're like, give us examples of something you've done that's where you had to make tough decisions,
Okay.
and I was like,
Yesterday,
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I was like, that's like an everyday thing for us.
sure.
And really as a paramedic, you deal with a lot of, especially in the busy area where I was working here in San Jose, California, high acuity calls, really, really sick people, nasty trauma.
Mhm.
And you're having to make a lot of decisions all day long. And if there's, maybe cops listening to this, one reason why it gave me a leg up on becoming a policeman is this. As a paramedic and as an EMT, you're a clinician. You're working in a clinical environment, meaning you are assessing a patient, looking for signs, symptoms, and signals, deciding on a differential diagnosis. I think this is what's going on with them based on what I'm seeing.
Mhm.
Applying protocols and applying policies and guidelines. Let's give the patient this much medicine at this time.
Right.
Then reassessing and looking for effect, sometimes deviating from the plan and going on to plan B or C, all in a really tense, uncertain, rapidly unfolding environment. So then when I became a policeman, although typical police training has nothing to do with being a clinician and is very block and silo and check the box and that kind of stuff, I was able to go, ooh, this is a lot like being a paramedic, right? You go on a call, it sounds like this, but then you get there and you look at the not signs and symptoms, but you look at how things are presenting themselves. What is the reporting party saying? What is the suspect doing? Why does he look that way? You're looking for, okay, can I categorize this? Oh, this is a domestic violence, or this is an active shooter, a little barricade, or this is a hostage barricade. And now, what is the treatment for that? Oh, that's right. We're going to, set up containment, set up incident command, call the guy back to whatever.
Right.
And is it working? No, we just tased him. It's not working. Okay, let's try a 40 millimeter less lethal one. Yes, that had good effect. Okay. Reading, and if we taught police officers to think like clinicians, because we really are, I think we'd be better off. So sometimes guys that are medics or EMTs, when they go to become cops, they tend to do well. And I think it's for those reasons.
Right. You're able to look at something and assess it. Okay, this is what we need to do. And when you go into it, you're able to break it down. Okay, that didn't work. We need to go to plan B and move on. And that's pretty cool. That's a good way to look at it. And that's not something I've thought about in that respect, because I've never been an EMT, but I do understand that makes a lot of sense. And so now that I'm looking at it, as you're saying that, I know several people who are police officers who used to be EMTs, and they do really, really well in being able to break things down and compartmentalize things in order to be able to actively deal with them. So that's actually pretty cool. So when you get through, you're going through EMT school, and you started looking at, okay, you could go become a firefighter, but you didn't like how they were doing the same thing you were doing, but it was different. And then, or you could have gone somewhere, a different route, and you chose the different route. What was that? How did that decision get made for you in your brain? That is.
Well, for me, just being a firefighter didn't appeal to me. And I had lots of friends that were paramedics who only became paramedics because they wanted to become firefighters, or later they were private paramedics like me, working in an ambulance, and then it just seemed like a natural thing to do. Very few people actually leave being a paramedic to go be a cop. But for me, it just didn't appeal to me to be working in a fire station and kind of just waiting on a call. There was something that appealed to me about being a little bit more autonomous and being a little bit more proactive. And so the thought of being a police officer, whereas not just reactive and responding to calls, but also being proactive and trying to dig up your own, case, or you're stopping a guy and you're trying to make a case on him.
Right.
I liked that idea of being out there and kind of doing your own thing, and being a paramedic. At least when I was, grew up in that world, becoming a paramedic, it really wasn't much of a team sport. It was more like, hey, you're the guy. When you're the patient person as the paramedic, you're in charge of the entire team.
Right.
And the firefighters and your EMT partner or your paramedic partner would sort of acquiesce to your treatment plan. But as we started, the fire service here locally started providing paramedic service. Well, now we've got 3 or 4 different paramedics on the scene, and sort of everyone has an idea of what to do, and we're all taking little pieces of it. And that just didn't appeal to me. I kind of wanted to be the guy.
Yeah.
And so I liked the idea of being in charge. I really liked the idea of, I just want to do it. Just rely on me and I'll take the onus of this. And so I thought, being a cop is really cool because you are autonomous. You are kind of solo guy out on patrol. You're doing your thing. Now we do work as a team and we do come together for critical incidents or something like that. But typically you're just kind of like, you're the contact officer, you're running the show, and we're all just kind of there to support you. So it just kind of suited my very type A personality. And I had a buddy who was a paramedic, and he became a fireman. And one day I went to see him over at the fire station. I was visiting him. I said, well, how's it going? We were both paramedics and now you're a fireman. What do you think of it? And he said, I'm so bored. I just got done cleaning the traffic cones that are on the fire rig.
Yeah, that's good.
Those orange traffic cones. He was waxing them because he had nothing else to do, right? He was working in a really slow area on a slow fire rig. And I said, oh man, I can't do that. I just can't do it. So,
right.
If you're a firefighter, you're working in a busy district and you're hopping, hey, cool, that's probably fun. I would enjoy that. But
right.
If you're working a slow area, oh man, I would just, I just can't do it. So
yeah, I've gone by a fire station before, and you know, I saw them actually in there. And hey, firefighters, I love you guys. I love you guys. You guys are great. But I actually saw them one time uh, shining the pole that they slide down.
Hmm.
They were they were shining the pole, and I said, "What are you guys doing?" And there's so many jokes that can be made from shining the pole, but it is that they had nothing else to do. Apparently, they pulled out all their hoses and put them all back, rolled them up, and washed the trucks and done everything else. But I'm sorry, washed the engines. I know
Yeah.
there's a difference, and
The
there's
apparatus.
that's right. There you go. And so, yeah, I would agree with you. I was at the I thought, okay, is that something I'd want to do? Because I grew up watching Emergency also, but I also watched Chips growing up,
Mhm.
and I lived in the area in which Chips was filmed, and they would go down a street, and that was around the corner from our house or whatever, and I knew the neighborhood that they were driving through or whatever, because and I was like, hey, that street doesn't go to that one. I'd be able to see from scene to scene where they're supposed to be in the same place. It's not, and so but I grew up watching that because I knew it, and so I was able to place myself in that, and that was a huge thing for my motivation to become a cop. But um, I just couldn't. I wasn't a big. Uh, However, I thought about the firefighter thing, and I don't know how many times as a police officer now that I sit back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm staying over late. I'm doing whatever. I've got this major case. I've got to go to court. I got to prep for this and all these different things. And I see the firefighters. They're over there having, they're barbecuing or something like that. I'm like, maybe did I make a wrong decision? I don't know.
Right.
There's a
Right.
level of, what point. So you choose that you're going to go become a police officer, and you had been an EMT, and before you started applying, and that's when you spoke to your dad and said, "Hey, what do you think?" Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Before I put in my application, I really needed to ask him that question. I was wondering how he felt about that. Yeah.
And it wasn't so much. Let me ask you this: it wasn't so much that you wanted to. Were you asking multiple people, or did you want to ask him specifically based off of his history in back when he was a kiddo? Was it that specific reason, or were you looking for just some guidance? Hey, I'm looking to
No,
make
I
a decision.
Yeah, it was really just to ask him on how he felt about that, given the fact that his dad was a policeman and was murdered in the line of duty. And
Right.
I had already made up my mind that that's what I wanted to do. And I don't know what I would have done had he said, I don't want you to do it. I mean, it wasn't like I was a child or anything. I wasn't asking necessarily for permission, but I did want to
Right.
ask him how he felt about that, because I can't imagine being in that position if my dad was killed in the line of duty, then my son said, I want to go do that job. To me,
Right.
that would be, heartbreaking. And
Mhm.
so I asked him, just to kind of see how he felt about that, because it was on my mind. It was on my mind at the
Mhm.
time. And the second question I asked him when he told me that, I said, um, given the fact that that I'll be a police officer, there's a chance that I might have to take someone's life, shoot and kill them.
Right.
And my dad was a religious guy. And so I said, how do you think God feels about that? And what does the Bible say about that?
Uh-huh.
And so his answer was something along the lines of, well, uh, God created everything, including police officers. And, he put certain people on this earth to do certain things to protect the rest of us. And there's nothing that's in the Bible that says anything about you have to let people kill you,
Correct.
And
Yeah.
so I thought that was a really, in typical fashion for him, very balanced way of answering that question, and just kind of reassuring me that, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I had that same, I've been in a shooting before, and one of the questions that I sat there and I was talking to um some partners of mine, and we were going over, the whole thing, and I was just like, I've not talked to God about this whole thing. It's just so it still weighs heavy on my heart. And he says to me, he goes, then he said, then that's what you need to focus on. You got to figure out. And he got a hold of me a couple more times after that conversation. He said, have you talked to the big guy yet? And he would even text me later on. So, that's a question that I had, constantly in my mind. But I had Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman on here several episodes ago, and he, we had kind of brought up this idea, and he mentioned that it's not, the Bible doesn't say thou shalt not kill. It says the actual verbiage is thou shalt not murder. And what is your intention? How are you doing it? How do you go through that? And that really, and I'd heard that before. I think I've forgotten it. When he brought it back up, I've had other conversations, theological questions with people that I know that know the subject well. And that's the general consensus of it, the general knowledge of it, is that it's, if you shoot somebody, are you murdering them or are you killing them? And the idea is, what's your intention? Are you trying to save your life or somebody else? Which is, I think, the spirit of the law that says, that's the law of homicide that pretty much every state has. Or are you intentionally going out to try to kill these people? And I don't think any police officer that I know of is waking up in the morning with the intention of going out and killing anybody. I've never known anybody with that intention. So, along those lines.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Dave Grossman. So his book on killing, I bought that book as a young police officer, probably with a year or two on, because I was perplexed by something. And it was the fact that in the police academy, which was, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, however long it was, there was not one time was anything mentioned about the act of killing another human being, the potential psychological ramifications for the officer, the spiritual implications or religious implications that you may have concerns about, the emotional aspect of taking another human being's life. And I just thought that was strange, given the fact that we talked a lot about shooting people.
Right.
Yes. We talk about shooting people like it's just this very casual concept. Well, if he does this, we're going to do that. And you want to shoot him between the eyes because it'll hit him in the brain pan and that'll shut off CNS function. And then also too, if you hit him, you want to, and make sure you do your follow-up shots in case he, no, this and that and failure drill. We're talking casually about killing people. And for young 23, 25-year-old cops, they are become indoctrinated in this conversation. Are we really ever talking about, oh, by the way, it's kind of a big deal when you kill people? You might
right.
You might think about this. It may cause some issues at home with you and your wife or your husband, your kids. There could be some peer support issues we may need to bring in. I think we're getting better about that as an industry now.
I would agree.
Peer support and PTS. I won't say D, but PTS.
Yeah.
I think we're doing better about that. I just don't know that we're in the academy or perhaps in the application process, really engaging people with that. We may ask sort of perfunctorily, hey, are you okay with killing somebody? Hey, on this piece of paper, are you okay with the fact that I might kill someone? Yes, sir, I am. I'm okay with that. That might be as deep as we really get into it. But I don't know that we're sitting down people and being like, no, but really, let's think about this for a second.
Yeah.
I get it that you saw our Instagram page, which showed coffee with a cop and come pet our dog day and look at these smiling cops, and then you got our recruiting brochure and it was like, hey, do you have what it takes to join our team and all that raw nonsense. Has someone actually sat you down, young man or young woman, and said, oh, by the way, you're not going to do any of that. You're going to work a night shift chasing around crackheads and mentally ill people who are naked and have weapons and they want to hurt you. And oh, by the way, you might have to take someone's life while they're trying to take your life.
Right.
That's not going to really look too good in a recruiting brochure, but that's probably more of a realistic conversation we need to have.
And all the things that come with that, you get. And I had this conversation not too long ago because there's a financial issue that our sheriff's office is getting ready to go through, and if there's no sheriff's office, I'll just have guns in my house and I'll take care of it myself. And I looked at this guy and I said, your wife's 86 years old. If you're not home, well, she knows how to use a gun. Okay, that's fine. Does she understand the ramifications of actually taking somebody's life? Additionally, we look at that for police officers as well. What's going to happen? How is that going to be scrutinized as far as the legalities of it? You're going to be read your Miranda rights. You're going to be interviewed as though you're a criminal and tell us what happened. What were you thinking? Hey, can we look at your phone? And we want to see, can we look at, we're going to start looking into all of your past social media. Have you been making comments in regards to this? You're going to be scrutinized. And are you able to handle the stress of being scrutinized and being interviewed and being looked at as somebody who potentially had this planned out from the beginning, when in fact you didn't? You didn't. You got sent to the call. You didn't have the intention of going over to this house necessarily. You got sent maybe. And so I had this conversation with this guy. I said, okay, let's say she's good. She's a good shot. She's able to make this shot. She kills this guy. Is she comfortable? She goes to church. She's, former school teacher. That's the extent of violence in her world. She's not a former UFC fighter or anything like that. She's an 86-year-old woman that, biggest thing that she does is go to church on Sunday. You don't have that mindset. And so when you actually kill somebody, if you were to kill somebody, are you able to live with that and everything that comes from that? Let's say you get exonerated in the investigation. Are you able to live with the fact that now you have forever have a mark that you've killed somebody? You're a killer. And that's a hard thing. And we don't, and like you said, we don't ask our police officers these questions. And we don't even tell them what it is they could expect if they get into a shooting and they kill somebody. We don't talk about that either. And it's a hard thing to do. I mean, and I'm talking about the immediacy. As soon as they're going to take your gun away, they're going to hold you in a room separate from everybody else, and you're going to feel like, what the heck's going on? And you're going to hear everybody talking about you, and nobody's talking to you for several hours, which is very stressful,
Yeah, we actually we just did a webinar. Savage Training Group just did a webinar yesterday, taught by one of our instructors. He's a full-time officer-involved shooting investigator in San Francisco for San Francisco PD. That's his full-time gig, is investigating OISs. And he did a little webinar yesterday about what happens after your officer-involved shooting, to really walk officers through the steps, the processes, from what your sergeant's going to ask you on scene, the public safety statement questions, what the criminal, the administrative investigation, who you have to talk to, who you don't have to talk to, how you're going to have to describe why you did what you did in granular detail, such as the suspect did this, and here's the things the suspect didn't do. He didn't freeze in place. He didn't try to flee. He continued a violent assault. You're going to have to answer questions like, why didn't you try to de-escalate this guy with the gun? Which may sound asinine to most officers, but people want to know nowadays, because that D word is written into law in many states, certainly here in California. So you're going to have to answer what practitioners like you and I might think is an obvious or asinine, but to the uninformed public, jury member, whatever, you're going to have to walk them through stuff, not to mention all of the psychological may occur, sleep disruptions, the nightmares, the religious implications the guilt that you may feel, whatever. And here's the path, to deal with those things. We really, really do a poor job of training officers to do that. I know we're taking a few steps with my company, trying to weave in some of that stuff. And there's certainly other training outfits that are doing the same. But, as a whole, I think we do a disservice to officers about that.
Yeah, I would agree. And just prepping people. And I think it's very important that we prep people, beforehand, because you're going into something. If you don't know something, that's where the fear comes in. I know a guy that he got into a shooting. The first thing that goes through his mind was, I'm going to prison.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be worrying about that. Yeah, they put the guy down, whatever the case is. But he should have the knowledge that I did my job and I did it right, and here's why I did it, and I knew he was doing XYZ, and I had to act this way. And it's so difficult. We shouldn't be putting so much fear into people. They should have a knowledge of, because honestly, it's such a big thing. I mean, it's gross motor movement. Someone's coming and trying to kill you or kill somebody else, which is why you would do that. So It's
Right.
difficult.
And maybe we can, to that officer that thinks his first thought after, saving his own life by shooting somebody is, gee, I'm going to prison. I don't think that's an irrational fear because
No, I
based on
agree.
the what's going on in the world. However, the ways of dealing with fear of the unknown or phobias of things is by getting more information, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So through training, we can help that officer understand why he's doing what he's doing and also help them tell their own story. Now, many police critics would accuse us of, oh, you're trying to coach the officer what to say. Well, I don't, we're not coaching them in the way that they're making us sound. What we are trying to do is give officers the proper words and terms to use and allow and train them not only in the motor skills of shooting or fighting, but also here's how to write the report about what you just did.
Right.
We need you because the officers that I work with are excellent shots and qualify as experts, and they're into the Brazilian jiu-jitsu stuff, and they're great at all the motor skills. I don't know if they're as competent eloquently describing in great detail why they did what they did, why they didn't do what they didn't do,
Mm.
why the suspect, what he was doing, what that meant. So just saying things like he was acting suspiciously or moving furtively, or he was, trying to imminent harm was about to occur, and all these words. It's like,
Yeah, because
yeah, what does that
pre-assault
mean?
indicators
Yeah,
were
pre-assault
explaining to me.
indicators.
Yeah,
Yeah, and what does that all mean?
right.
Why was that concerning? How did that help to form your opinion of his apparent intent to cause imminent harm?
Right.
And what are the pertinent negatives, meaning the things he didn't do? Well, we gave him an opportunity to comply. He could have complied. He didn't. Then I told him to do this. He didn't do that. He could have simply frozen in place, even if he didn't drop the knife, but just froze in place. He didn't do that.
Right.
Instead, he did these. He continued a violent assault towards me. He ran at me with a knife raised above his head, staring intently at me, communicating his malicious intent. At no time did he say, "Officer, I just found this knife and I just wanted to hand it to you." You know, you can really get into detail about all the things he didn't do and
Right.
start painting the picture for
When
the uninvolved reader, right? Paint
right.
the picture for the grand jury of what it was like to be in that tense, uncertain, rapidly evolving situation where your life was in jeopardy, where you were literally a victim. Tell us
Right.
how it was, officer.
Right.
Don't sit there like the tough guy and say, well, the suspect, made a furtive movement toward, forget all that. Tell
Yeah.
us what I thought this guy was about to kill me. And here's
Mhm.
why.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an irrational fear.
Because I'm a human and I have
Yeah.
I fear and I'm afraid and I didn't want to die. And I remember I know a guy, I spoke to a guy one time, he said he'd been in a shooting and he said that was the scariest thing I've ever seen because the guy was charging at him with a big old machete and he'd already been hit with bean bags, an entire thing of beanbag, a shotgun, and it had no effect on this guy. So, I mean, yeah, like you said, we have to paint that picture. And for people who not only they're not there, so they want to know all the details, but they may also not know. They may not know how they're just regular people. Maybe they've been a medical assistant for their whole life, and so they've always they've gone to school and they went to become a medical assistant, and they know the office really well. They can figure that out. But as far as people are concerned and violent people, it's a totally different world for them. So you have to
Yeah.
paint that picture on how people react and how people do things. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's a hard thing to get people to understand that. But I think it's a human thing that we don't know how to take the thoughts in our head or take certain words and be able to flesh those things out. Because I teach karate, and last night we were going over things. We were going over some various things that were words, character and integrity and trust and all this different stuff. And so you start asking kids, okay, what is, you guys know what that is? Yeah, I know what that is, integrity or trustworthiness or whatever. And okay, what is it? Oh, I don't know. You can't, I said, you got to be able to take the thoughts in your head and make them into words. How do you do that? How do you define just a single word like honesty or integrity? And so there was one person in there, she was able to do it. She used to be a librarian. It's just, and she's like, oh yeah, this is how you do it. And she's as smart as a whip. Obviously, she's retired, but she wanted to do something in her retirement, and that is do karate with a bunch of kids, which is cool for her. But I got teenagers, and they don't even. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. So it's a human thing. Is taking those words. The difference is now we're getting, like you said, more granular with it. So
I'm thinking, in a lot of our training classes, sometimes, we have classes about all kinds of different stuff, generally related to tactics and safety and decision making and leadership under stress and crisis situation. That's kind of the stuff we really concern ourselves with because it's really important and there's a lot at stake in those things. And oftentimes we'll tell students like they'll attend one of our critical incident response courses, learning how to set up hot calls and that kind of stuff. And we'll say, look, some of the stuff that we're going to share with you today, you may have done before, you may have seen before. We're going to give you a different way of thinking about it or a different way of describing it, right? We're going to teach you to look at the world through filters, right? So
right.
when you're responding to a call, you're going to try to match up what kind of call is this, right? Like we were talking about earlier, being a clinician, assessing information and then prescribing a treatment. Well, we're rolling into this call. The guy's in the house. He's got a gun. He's alone in there. He's suicidal. Well, this is a solo barricade. And furthermore, this is a non-criminal barricade.
Right.
It's going to start dictating our tactics versus it's a domestic violence call. The wife picks up. She says, come quick. My husband's got a knife. The call goes dead. We get there. We hear screaming inside and don't stab me. And she's yelling. We're going, boom, hostage barricade or active killing. We're able to go and start applying tactics based on our assessment of the situation.
Right.
So oftentimes we're giving students in these classes a different word to use, a different terminology. And you may go, yeah, I've been doing that. Like we teach how to run perimeters and how to catch bad guys that are fleeing. And you go, well, I've done some of that, but I never knew how to describe this.
Yeah.
And if you can describe things quickly and succinctly in a way that makes sense, you're going to use that on the radio. You're able to go, this is what we're going to do. And the way you say it is so easy to understand. And because you have such a command of the terminology, that's going to help you in a tax situation. That's going to help you write a report. That's going to help you answer the question after you get involved in a shooting, because someone eventually is going to say, why'd you shoot him? Right? Some investigator is going to ask, why did you shoot the guy? And your ability to describe what you did quite literally can mean the difference between this is a justifiable homicide, manslaughter, or murder, right?
Right.
Because if we've got a guy who's dead and you shot him, it's not a whodunit. There's only three things that can be murder, manslaughter, justifiable homicide. And what makes it justifiable homicide may depend largely on your description of why you did what you did.
Yeah.
So that's why, these things are so important. And that comes with training. That comes with training. Just like we practice our firearm skills on the range, we also need to be practicing how are we educating our minds on how to describe that force or why are we doing this and the more sort of decision-making process of that thing.
Right. I think that's absolutely important. I think that's fantastic that you guys are doing that and putting that out there for people. That's cool. So let's go back. I think we kind of got off on a tangent, which is absolutely cool with me. However, I kind of want to get into your early years as a police officer, as you're going through it and you're figuring it out, and I've talked to several people. We figure that it's about 3 to 5 years before you're actually a viable police officer that knows all your resources and you have confidence and all that stuff as you're going through work. But what was the thing in your early years that you kind of learned who you were and that kind of got you to that point where you're like, you know what, I think I know this pretty well and I know how to be able to share this information and I know what I'm doing. At what point did you kind of grow up and realize I'm not a brand new kid anymore?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, it does take a few years to kind of figure out what you know and also realize you don't know a lot of stuff. And my career, like a lot of police officers' career, you can sort of trace it on a map on how it's going to go. And I read a book many years ago called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement by, I think its name is Kevin Gilmartin.
Yep.
And in it, one of the most fascinating parts of that book is it says, here's how your career will go year 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to, and when I was reading it, I'm like, man, this guy is like nailing it. It's how you look at the world. It's how you view yourself. It's how you everything, right?
Yeah.
And when I first started being a police officer, I literally would tell people I would do this for free. I can't believe they pay us. And as a matter of fact, I don't know how much I make an hour. I don't care.
Right.
It was an irrelevant number to me because I was just so enamored. It wasn't just having fun. It was like a love affair. I was so enamored with being a police officer. I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. And the problem is when you become a cop, you have a lot of success. You tell people to put their hands behind their back, they do it. Right? Mm-hmm. You chase people down, you tackle them, they go to jail. Like you go to court and prevail and the guy goes to jail. You get a lot of successes. And so you start to believe, man, I'm really awesome at this.
Yes, I have power.
Yes, I'm powerful. I'm good. I'm whatever. And you never stop to think, am I that good or are the crooks that bad? Or am I really good at this? Or did the crook just decide not to kill me that day?
Correct.
Is this positive outcome because of my great tactics and my awesomeness in police work? Or is it just so happened that the crook chose to cooperate? And once you start to have times when the crooks don't cooperate and things don't go well and you completely step on it and screw things up, that's when you start realizing, ooh, I didn't see that one coming, and start to go, I'm going to make adjustments. And so very early on, I said, you know what? I am not going to allow my career to be dictated by my employer. If they're not going to send me to schools, I'm going to go to my own schools. If they're not going to buy these books for me, I will buy my own books and read them. And I'm going to read more than everyone. And I'm going to go to more classes than everyone. And I'm going to seek out experts in the field, even folks who aren't in my own agency. And I want to get to know them and I want to ask them questions. So I joined the National Tactical Officers Association, the California Narcotics Officers Association. Whatever associations I could join, I would try to get involved with them and learn from people. And I knew that police work was not just bound by the walls of my agency. It's a big world out there.
Yeah.
Right. And so not every expert is in your own agency. And just because they say it's that way doesn't mean it's that way. That's one version of it. Right. And so I started to just try to get my own learning up to speed. And I started to have a lot of success with that and getting I was just feeling like, oh, I'm firing on more cylinders now because I understand things at a deeper level through getting my own training and having my own experiences. And then I started putting in for different assignments for SWAT. I got on SWAT, I got a lot of training there and became an FTO. And then 9/11 hit eventually. And then there was an opportunity to go work on a terrorism task force. And I did that full time for a few years. And then there was an opportunity to get promoted. And I did that. I got promoted to sergeant, and there was an opportunity to go on the crisis negotiation team as a team leader. And I've never done that, so let me do that. And there was a lot of stuff along the way where just let me go involve myself in that I don't know a lot about, and I want to learn about. I love a high learning curve, and then I love mastering that, and then going on to something else that I don't understand, and then trying to master that.
Right.
And so I think if you have a growth mindset, you like learning, and you have an aptitude for learning, which we all are gifted with. Don't believe the hype that, well, I'm not good at math or I'm not good at this. Yeah, because you haven't applied yourself in that. You can be good at it.
Right.
I could learn. I'm terrible at playing basketball, but I could learn how to play basketball if I wanted to. I could. I'm not limiting myself by doing that. And so having a growth mindset, not allowing your employer to dictate your career path, and always being willing to go, I don't know anything about that. Let me dive into that and figure this one out, has served me very well. And now owning a training company, I can go, you know what? Me and the other instructors, we've been there and we've done that, and we can accelerate it for you because we've done all the studying and the research, and we've got the training and the experience. Now we can explain it simply for you so that we'll just cut to the chase. Here's the information that you might think is really interesting. And we've packaged it up in like tight little, like 1 or 2 day classes so you can just go experience it. We think we've got something pretty special. So it's kind of been the culmination of my career is really now running this training company and we're having a lot of success, and guys are really digging it. And I think we're onto something.
That's pretty cool that you're able to take that and just take your whole your experience. We always talk about, based on my training and experience. You're actually able to take that and base stuff on your training and experience and your own desire to learn something and read and grow yourself and be somebody that produces as opposed to somebody that just consumes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that's not something that you see every day. And like you said, the allowing your department to determine here's the direction we're going to have you go. Well, I want to learn about this and this and this and this and this. I want to have a full career. So but okay, you might go on this path. However, you're also doing all these other things on your own time and in your own out of your own pocket, maybe even sometimes, and making it happen that way. So, that's awesome that you're able to do that. Now, did you get pushback from any of that when you would say, hey, look, I did this and here's something that I learned. Can we implement XYZ? You get pushback because it wasn't their idea or anything like that?
Of course there was pushback, and people don't like people that are threatening to them, and you can come across as threatening if you've studied a bunch and gotten a bunch of training and then are willing to go, hey, I know what to do here. Like, I know the right thing to do here. Mm-hmm. And I think we should do X, and kind of demonstrating leadership. That can be threatening to small-minded people. So if you're around those types of people, for sure, they're going to be threatened by that. If you can surround yourself with other high performers and people that have a growth mindset and people that are equally competent themselves, if you can find a place, a team, a department that you can surround yourself with those folks, you'll be much happier because they're not threatened by you being awesome because they know they're awesome too.
Right.
And you're going, yeah, I love the fact that you're awesome because you're making me more awesome.
Right.
And if you're a high performer and you're around low performers, you're going to get grief. And you find yourself kind of, maybe it doesn't work. Now, if you're around a low performer who has a growth mindset and will allow you to bring them up and provide them the training and the experiences that you've gotten, great. But if you're around low performers with static, fixed mindsets who find you threatening, yeah, you're going to have a tough time. And I certainly have been around both of those.
Right.
I've had great other, colleagues that were equally, growth oriented, and they enjoyed the challenge of that. And I've had the opposite, but I have chosen to surround myself in an apartment and around other people who enjoy type A personalities. They enjoy assertiveness. They enjoy people that demonstrate leadership, mm-hmm. and they also enjoy learning. And those are the kind of people that I like hanging around with. And I'm too old to be hanging around with people that are going to be toxic and they don't enjoy what I'm about. Great, right. I don't want to bother you, so let me go find people that I can be around that are motivated, that are ultra professional, and they're never done learning. The minute you say, I've got it all figured out, I'm just going to kind of coast in my career, A, you don't have it all figured out, so it's a dangerous way of looking at it. B, this job is evolving. How can you not have a growth mindset if the job is evolving? Every year, I think you would agree, Ken, every year we have to learn more stuff.
Absolutely.
So we've got to continue to be open to that and be like, okay, what are we learning about now? Now we're human trafficking experts. After 9/11, we were hazardous material biohazard response experts. Okay, great. Now we're going to do investigative interviews and cognitive interviews and
school shooting and everything else that comes with that, or de-escalation, like you were talking about, or
forcible entry experts. We're going to know how to break down doors. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Mental health evaluators. We're having to do with that because that's such a big thing anymore. And, things like that. And, I always talk about, and I've said it on here several times, but, you're going to be the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. Now, if you hang out with 5 geniuses, you're going to be the dumbest genius, maybe. But if you hang out with a bunch of dummies, you might be the smartest dummy. Which would you rather be? So hang out with those people. I mean, you might be the dumbest genius, but at least you're going to be a genius, and you can go off but surround yourself with those people who are going to support you. And they're going to, when you say, hey, there's this thing I'm looking at doing. cool. How can I help you do that? Because that would be an awesome thing. I'd love to see you succeed in that. But if you got people that are always just like, oh yeah, that's stupid, and you don't ever want to tell anybody about the plans that you have or the irons you have in the fire, what's the point? I mean, you're going to eventually just say, well, maybe I shouldn't do those things either. You start just dogging yourself down, and it's so hard to get into that. How do you, since we're on this topic, how do you face that? I mean, if you don't have the option to just X those people out of your life, how do you deal with them? As far as
Yeah, I had to make a change several years ago. I started at one police agency,
Mhm.
and I had achieved a lot of success there and a lot of trappings of success: promotions, specialty assignments, seniority, um, lots of vacation and sick time. Whatever the trappings of success of all that
Right.
was. But I wasn't happy,
Mhm.
and it wasn't an organization that was aligned with my personal outlook on police work and goals and whatnot, but also just didn't have a growth mindset. It had a very fixed mindset, and I wanted to be around. I wanted to be around and work in an organization that would find what I had to offer valuable. Like
Mhm.
you said, when you bring up an idea, they would be like, "Great, please, could you come share this idea over here?" And I thought I had really, achieved the competence to be taken seriously with that. So you know what I did? I quit the agency that I was working at, and I went and got hired at another agency
Mhm.
that I really wanted to work at. An agency that um, was had a lot of high performers in it. That was very much concerned with training and growing, and celebrated me even before I had started there. They really recruited me
Mhm.
and wanted to bring me in. And I started over. I was a sergeant at my previous agency. I was the fourth most senior sergeant. I had 600 hours of sick time on the books. I was, you know, kind of established. I
Right.
left it all behind and started over as an officer again
Through
because I
FTEP and
want,
everything you had to go
yeah,
through.
going through another FTO process and another probation process and learning. You got to make your bones and make your reputation and meet everybody and go start shagging patrol calls again as an officer.
Mhm.
But I did it because I wanted to be happy, and I wasn't happy. And so, your question, how do you deal with that? Well, I would say you try to make positive changes in the organization or team that you're a part of. And if that can't happen and you keep getting grief or shut down or just problems,
Mhm.
perhaps you need to say, you know what? I'm not going to try to change this place that's probably bigger than me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go somewhere that will celebrate. And it's very, very hard to leave everything behind and start over.
Right.
Most people will not do that. It's
Right.
uncommon. But if you're not happy, what are you going to do? Would
Yeah.
you rather just stay unhappy and face grief for trying to be the kind of person you want to be? Or would you like to perhaps give up some things, seniority, promotion, that type of thing, and start over? But the benefits so outweighed the risk for me that I went and did it, and I've never been happier. I don't have a lot of those trappings that I had before of the seniority, the promotion. I could go try to get promoted again, but right now I'm an officer. But what I do have is an organization that is very focused on the future, training, growth mindset. And they go, Scott, you own a training company and you work here. Can we just pick your brain and use you to help out with this training or that training? And
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
I, I get to exercise all the stuff that I want to do that I think is important. And I'm around other super high performing, competent people, and I get to learn from them. And I bring that back to my training company and go, well, here's what we're doing at my agency. We did blah, 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 blah. And
Right.
now I get to share that on a nationwide stage, going into other states and training. So it's just been a positive thing. So if you're willing to give up some things, there's a lot of agencies out there. You're not happy at the fire department or the police department you work at. Well, there's, I think, 18,000 police agencies in America. And if you're a good guy or a good girl, you can just point it on a map where you want to work because everybody's hurting for people. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're marketable, you can work wherever you want.
What do you say to people who do that and they say, well, the grass isn't always greener, or like, oh no, the departments are departments. It's the same. Everybody's the same, and there's always going to be whatever. What do you say to that?
The grass is definitely greener where I'm at. So I would dispute anyone as far as where I work. But you need to do your research. And if you're expecting to go into an organization with no problems, I'm not aware of any organization like that, be it police work or private industry or that. It's just, what problems do you want?
Sure.
And every organization has its issues, but which issues are you cool with dealing with? Like, I'm cool with dealing with the issues at my agency. They pale in comparison to the benefits that I receive.
Right.
And I like being around healthy organizations with healthy people that will build me up, hold me accountable, make me want to achieve, make me want to perform. And also, our organization is deeply entrenched in a mission. We have a strong mission, which is to protect the citizens of our town and the visitors of our town, and to aggressively chase down criminals who would try to threaten that mission.
Right.
And that's something every cop can get behind, right? Protecting people and chasing bad guys, I'm in, right?
Because that's what we got into the thing in the first place for.
Amen. And that is our focus. We have not lost focus on that. And that's not what every police agency can say.
Yeah.
And so I feel inspired when I go to work every day, like, all right, I'm part of a mission that I believe in, that I've been trained to do, and that I'm really good at. Like, I'm really good at police work. I can't say that about everything in my life, but this I'm really good at. I'm a professional at it. Right. So if you'll allow me to do this job, I'll do it really well.
So is that what was the reason that you left the other agency, was because it just wasn't what you weren't getting, I guess, fed that professionalism or that thing that helped you grow, and you said, you know what, I need to go somewhere where I'm just going to grow, and the plant's going to get watered somewhere else as opposed to here. And then having you did your research, you talked to them, you get over there. Was that difficult going from, obviously you had to subordinate your ego a little bit in going into that whole idea from a supervisor with years and years of experience to now going back to the bottom and having somebody else, look over your shoulder and see if you knew what you were doing, what you were talking about.
Yeah, you may be surprised, but I didn't find it that difficult to that portion of it, of, like you said, subordinating my ego, because my ego was never entrenched in being a sergeant and I'm in charge and you got to listen to me. I never really viewed it like that. I viewed it like, no, I have been given this formal authority because of the informal authority I've already demonstrated and my leadership capability. And, that's what I do. But even sometimes as a sergeant, I had people working for me that were more knowledgeable about a particular topic, traffic investigation or some, criminal investigation that they knew
financial stuff, frauds or
and I would be like, hey, I'm here, but you're in charge. Like, what should we do? You're the expert here.
Right.
So when I left being a sergeant, started over as an officer at the new agency, I didn't mind going into another field training program. Please evaluate me on what I'm doing, because I believe that I know what I'm doing here, and I would welcome an outside evaluation of it. And you'll see what areas I need to improve in. And there were plenty, because I hadn't been doing control work like a DUI. Like, I'm going to take a DUI and I'm going to investigate and I'm going to write it. Oh, okay. Well, I'll try. And I needed to get some more refreshing on that. But I didn't find it that difficult. And also I don't feel the need to tell everybody everything I know. Hey, I know this and I know that. So it was okay for me to play the part of the new guy and just sort of be a good soldier, and then slowly allow people to see this guy's a good guy, and slowly allow, hey, Scott, could you help us with this? Could you help us with that? So to me, it really, if your ego's not tied up in it too much, and you'll just, like I'm a cop, whether I'm a sergeant, a cop, or an officer as a cop, or I work the detective bureau, or I work in patrol, I'm a cop. Those are side things, right? And so it was, very quickly I was able to go, okay, yeah, I'm back to being patrolman, and I'm going to go chase the crackhead down the street, and yeah, got it, no problem.
But that helped your mindset, and I guess that put things at ease in your heart, where you're like, I am comfortable how I'm doing what I'm doing, and able to just go off and I can go do my investigation and I get to go home. I don't have to worry about anybody's timesheets. I don't have to worry about, approving vacation or making sure we have, the proper number of
That was
on the road. And
You nailed it. I actually started looking at, let me just look at the positive thing, because I missed being
Yeah.
a sergeant. I really loved being a sergeant. I loved running hot calls. I loved being in charge. And so I missed it. It wasn't hard for me to not do it, but I didn't miss it. But then I started looking at all the positives. Man, people don't call me on my day off because I'm just a patrol officer and there's 100
Right.
more that just like me. Why would you call me?
or meetings to go to on your day
No
off.
meetings, no projects, no time cards, no IAs, no nothing. I'm just a guy pushing a patrol car around in one beat of the city.
Right.
I'm a mere cog in the wheel, and so I just kind of looked at it like that, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool to not have any responsibility and
Right.
just be a regular guy.
Yep. And now with that, having reached that pinnacle, and then, I guess if you look at it like that, come back down to frontline police officer, you're able to take all that experience and all that time and invest it into your company, into the Savage Training Group, where now you're able to share multiple aspects of police work into giving to other people to help them look at some things in a positive light, where they're
Right.
able to say, okay, this person has credibility because they've been where either I want to go or where I'm at. And that's just like I said, it just adds credibility to you.
Yeah, and I think that's huge in our line of work. You can't have someone who's not credible teach another cops. And, we're talking about me, but there's, I've got a bunch of other instructors, and those guys are very credible as well. Most of them are still on the job or recently retired. You're not going to find any kind of dinosaurs telling stories about the old days. Now, these are guys who are all in it. They get it. They understand what it's like to work with body cams. They understand what it's like to work post George Floyd. They understand what it's like to work given how things are nowadays, not 10 or 20 years ago.
Right.
10 or 20 years ago, when I first started, that police work is almost unrecognizable to what it's like now. And so we really do get it. We really do demonstrate our authority by having credibility in the space, and then also equally being great teachers, right? We in my company, we spend as much time talking about the material we're going to teach as we do how we're going to teach it and how we're going to present it in a dynamic environment that not only is interesting to listen to and not only is not death by PowerPoint, but also is going to help officers improve performance in the field. Right?
Right.
We've got a short time of people in a 1 or 2 or 3 day class. What can we do that will embed information into their long-term memory and allow them to access and retrieve that in the field when it really matters, right? So
Right.
under stress, in those tense, rapidly evolving, uncertain circumstances, that's how we focus. And I think that's how our company is differentiating ourselves a little bit, is that we're really consumed with how humans learn, and like the modern science of learning, and how people actually retain information and then can retrieve it and perform in the field. And so we really backwards engineer all of our courses to that standard. So if Ken, you come to a class, we're hoping you're going to leave with information or understanding that's going to help you tonight when you go on patrol in the field. And then a year from now, when you're like, boom, I remember what those guys said. I remember this particular thing. I can apply it now, because if we just make a whiz bang class with cool videos and a pretty slick looking PowerPoint, so what? How does that help you, the student?
Right. Yeah. And people, I think we overlook that, where if you get it presented to you well, you're there with the information, and you're just soaking that in. And like you said, it depends on how people learn and how you're going to adjust the teaching so people can learn it. I'm a field training officer, and I had a trainee at one time, and she was saying, hey, I noticed that I was trying to explain how to go over things, and I started noticing that I was like talking too much. And I said, okay, maybe you got to think of it like this. I would give examples, or I do whatever on this one topic. And I said, I'm sorry if I talk too much. And she says, no, I think what you're trying to do is determine how I learn. And so you're giving me all, the various different ways in which I can learn something, hoping that one of those things sticks. I said, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And the reason she was able to see this is because she was 40-year-old coming into becoming a police officer at 40 years old. And I thought that's not something you see every day. However, mother of two, 40-year-old decided to be a cop, but she understood that because she used to be a counselor. And I said, okay, perfect. So I do talk too much for a reason, I guess. So I want to make sure what I'm teaching is getting explained. So really quick, you just said something a little bit ago where you said the things that you're doing now are not the same as 20 years ago. Give us a couple examples of what it was 20 years ago and what it is today that are kind of juxtaposed to each other.
20 years ago, there wasn't an assumed malice in the heart of every police officer. The public didn't assume that when a police officer took an action, that there was some sort of malintent involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't also surrounded by people who make uninformed judgments about what the police should have done. And they pontificate on the internet and say things like, the police should have done this, the police should have done that. All they had to do was just de-escalate him. They should have just, shot the gun out of his hand, or they should have just talked to him more. They should have had a clinician talk to him. These people on the internet, usually making very pithy, clever comments that generally amount to, it's just this easy. It's so easy. You guys should have just done this.
Right.
I would never, ever dream about going onto a brain surgeon's web ring, if one exists,
right,
and going, oh, hey, brain surgeons, next time you're operating on the brain, here's how you want to do it. Right. I would never think to watch a video of a brain surgery and open my mouth and say anything about how they should be doing what they're doing, because I don't have a clue how they're doing it. I'm not a practitioner in the field. I have no frame of reference. I've never been in a brain surgery.
And you're not seeing what they're seeing.
I know nothing about the topic.
Right.
Yet, strangely, nowadays, almost anyone you meet has a strong opinion that they believe is informed and rational. And they have no concept of the fact that they may be suffering from I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where you overestimate your own ability in something based on no actual testing on that.
Correct.
I would have done this. I would have done that. Really? How are you developing that opinion? Well, I worked in a mental institution for 20 years. Cool. In a controlled environment where no one had weapons. There was no family members around. There was no other incidents. It wasn't dark where you were.
Right.
I can list 50 things right now that are different about how we work.
Right. And everything's different. Everything has a reason that we do a certain thing. There's a, yes. Absolutely.
So those are some of the differences, and the advent of body cam, constantly being on camera. For most people, if you point a camera at them and say, go, I want to film you doing something, they get a little nervous and they get a little tripped up with their words. They were fine, right? Until you turn the camera on. Maybe you've experienced that when you're interviewing people on the podcast.
Yeah.
We as police officers walk around with a camera and a microphone on all day long, right?
Yeah.
It's strange. It's odd. Let's not pretend it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that wasn't the case 20 years ago. So there was just a lot of differences. And if you were a cop 20 years ago, you didn't have to be as good as the police officers nowadays have to be. They have to be experts in so many things and almost perform at a infallible level, like make no mistakes. And that's the standard that people are holding them to, a superhuman standard. So these are these unrealistic expectations of how we're supposed to act. Those are some of the things I see as different now than I did 20 years ago.
Right. And I guess there's the over friendly, the over professional, how you have to, you say sir and ma'am to the nth degree. And even as they're trying to kill you, please stop, sir, put the knife down, sir. And, I know a police officer who was giving a presentation. He was talking about, active shooter stuff. And his thing, and he was giving it to, I think, some churches. And so obviously you have to kind of watch how you're presenting things. His whole idea was if we have the suspect coming out to us, or we're going in and we're trying to get people's attention, obviously there may be some. He said basically, if you're talking to Russians, you're gonna speak Russian. If you see these people on the street, you see these people that are trying to kill people, you may very well hear officers cussing and screaming at somebody to put the effing knife down, or whatever the case may be, or you know, put the effing gun down. And you're going to hear this. He said you're just going to have to understand that you're going to hear this language. Well, that whole idea that we have to be absolute professionals from the beginning and all the way through to the end, even as our life is being threatened, is difficult to do because, like we talked about before, we're humans. And as humans, we get frustrated, we get scared. We go through the Rolodex in our head and find the last thing that we remember, the one thing that we do most often, or what we remember. And that's what's going to either come out of our mouth or how we're going to act. Once again, what we've been trained to do, how our training has been the forefront, and what have we been training on? Have we been training on talking trash on Call of Duty when we play that because we work graveyard and we have nothing else to do after everybody goes to bed but play Call of Duty with other people online, and so we're talking trash? So are we going to do that after we get into a shooting, or do we train better, and is our training positive, and does it help our who we are and what it is that we do?
Right.
So you get to that point. You're still working patrol now, and you have your company, the Savage Training Group, doing what it does. What exactly do you guys do? Obviously, you've talked about training, but how do you do what it is you do? And
Yeah,
what is it?
Yeah, we offer in-person and online or on-demand advanced training courses for law enforcement, and we're really trying to help cops become experts, enhance their career, and save lives. We're obsessed with raising the bar of law enforcement training, and we just think that the old, death by PowerPoint, check the box, that is just not good enough for police officers anymore. And so
right.
We on our website, savagetraininggroup.com, we have a variety of in-person training courses and on-demand courses. And, of course, when COVID hit, we started filming all kinds of stuff and putting those online because we can't get out to every state and every city. Not every officer is going to be able to kind of come to an in-person class. So it's like, what can we do to get them something? So let's put some online classes on there. Mm-hmm. Some of them are full, multi-hour classes where you go through each chapter and you've got tons of videos and information there. Some are just some pre-recorded webinars that are pretty quick and you can kind of zip through those. And then our in-person courses, they range from 1 to 5 days, depending on the subject. We've got classes like critical incident response courses, like how to set up hot calls, how to run perimeters, how to, work in small teams and get containment and set up react teams and deal with, barricades and stuff like that. We have courses about field training officer courses, how to become an FTO. And I was an FTO, and the class that I went to learn how to become an FTO left a lot to be desired, we'll say. And so we designed FTO update, and FTO supervisor courses. So where we help FTOs become expert teachers and really get them into the modern science of learning. And they're learning from guys that are experts in the field. Most of our FTO instructors work at San Jose PD here in California, and that's where, the FTO kind of model was created. And we've got a crisis communication course taught by Sergeant Paul Grayton from NYPD. He's a full-time crisis communication officer there, or a digital communication officer. He does a one-dayer on that, and a variety of other courses. So we've got kind of a cool mix of classes that are all taught by experts in the field. So you're going to see some pretty high flyers as our instructors, but these guys care and they love cops. And so you would be amazed at how much time they spend in Zoom calls, phone calls with each other, with me, with it, trying to design curriculum. How do we make it more engaging? How do we update did you see this video that just came out? Let's use that to illustrate this point. So constantly trying to refresh. So if you come to one of our classes, I think you're going to walk away going, this is a little bit better than things that I've been to. And I actually learned something, and I'm walking away with concrete info that I can recall and kind of apply to my job. So I'm super passionate about training. I think it's the path forward. I think that's going to solve a lot of issues in our industry, and it's not only helping cops succeed, but it's going to help them be real experts for the people that they serve. So I'm super passionate about it.
Right. So you've mentioned a couple times already that it's not death by PowerPoint, and I've been to, I don't know, hundreds of hours of training where it is PowerPoint. Even if the guy knows his PowerPoint presentation without having to look at it, he's clicking right through and he's not reading up, looking up at the screen. Okay, so here's the thing: he knows his thing. He still uses. How do you guys go without? I mean, you have a presentation, but it's not a PowerPoint specifically.
Yeah, the first thing we always say is the PowerPoint is not the class, right? Mm-hmm. The PowerPoint is not the class. So you should never start designing a class by designing a PowerPoint. We're starting with the end in mind. So every class we have, we say, what is the goal? What do we want students to be able to do, or what do we want them to know that they didn't do or know before? Right. What is the goal? Okay, now how do we get them there? Because we have some classes that don't use PowerPoint. We have some classes that use PowerPoint. It's just a tool.
Right.
And so there's nothing inherently wrong with the program of PowerPoint. It's just how cops use it. Most police instructors will use it as a cue card system. They will write down the things they want to say. Then they will look at the screen and say those things. It's like a cue card, right? That's not the right way to use PowerPoint. What we do is say, look, if there's something that needs to be visually displayed, such as a photo, a video, or a text, let's do that, right? But if it's not, and it's not lending itself, then just let's use other training modalities, such as lecture, small group activities, a study session. Hey, here's a QR code. Go to that, pull out your phone, go to that website, look at this case, watch this video, get in your groups and answer this question. Why did the officer do this? Or is that in line with this? Or look at the screen, we've put a law up there. Okay, this is the law, it says this. Let's research that, let's study that. Or let's watch a video. But the old bullet points where you just, you put the bullet points there and then you read them, that is not what we do. That's not what we're about, because that is making it easier on the instructor. But we want instructors, and I demand that instructors know the material and don't need a cue card. And if you do need a cue card, put it on your own laptop and put your cue card PowerPoint thing on your laptop to use, or your speaking notes, but don't display that to the students and then have them follow along. And anytime you put something on the PowerPoint, the students will look at that. And if there's no congruence between what you're saying and that, they can't follow both at the same time. Right. So maybe it's just a photo. It's a really powerful image of something. And then you're going to riff on that and you're going to talk about whatever you want them to learn. But we also say things like, when we're talking, you may not be learning. So we're going to talk for a short period of time, and then we're going to give you something to do, because we need this to be a little bit more experiential and not just group work for group work's sake, so that we can say, oh, look at us, we're doing some teaching technique here. No, you're going to start tuning out what I'm saying. So I'm not just going to go into some lengthy lecture. This isn't a lecture. This is a training course.
Right.
So give you a little bit of information, get you to do something with it.
I think that's fantastic, because I think too often it doesn't matter what it is. And I've had really good topics, things, and it's just and the presenter is good too. They know how to public speak and they present well. It's just everybody's leaning on or relying on that PowerPoint, and as opposed to not, they'll have the bullet points up there and they'll read the bullet points as if the people in the audience don't know how to read. You don't want to be the person that just reads aloud. Why don't we just all do this together? We're in second grade again, that sort of thing. And that's ridiculous. So that's awesome that you guys are doing it that way. And it's just one of those things that I'm sitting here looking at my phone thinking, I just got to pull this up and I got to look up, get whatever trainings out there for you guys. And I want to share this with, department heads that I know. That would be cool, so I say keep that up, and I'm assuming it's going well for you.
It is going well. Things are going great. We're not only teaching here in California where we're based, but also teaching in states around the United States. So if anyone wants to host us, what they do is they go on the website, say, hey, I want to host a course, and then we come out to that agency. And the nice thing is the agency gets free spots, and we come to you. You can kind of control the day and decide which day you want it. And then that's kind of how we make inroads. But we're really focused on quality over quantity. So we try to stay a little bit more boutique-y. We don't want to be like Motel 6 on every corner. We're just trying to be the best. And so we're really focused on quality and just slowly growing and going to other areas.
And that's awesome. How can people, other than you, and you mentioned the website a little bit ago, but how can people find and get a hold of you and Savage Training Group?
Yeah, our website, savagetraininggroup.com, is the best place to look at our training courses. There's always a schedule there that shows exactly where we're going to be, who's teaching it. Also on savagetraininggroup.com is the online classes. You can see those there and get enrolled in those. We've also got a ton of like articles and podcast interviews that you can kind of hear me and some of the other instructors talking. And there's videos there, and you can get a feel for kind of what we're about. And then we are on Instagram. You can follow us there and check out. We do giveaways, and it's kind of a little bit more fun on Instagram. And then me personally, I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. I find that to be a little bit more professional and kind of fits my personality. And so if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm there. You can find me, Scott Savage, pretty easily there. And then I'm happy to connect and share training ideas and share kind of outlook on police work and how we can all kind of push our industry forward, because we're struggling right now. So
yes,
it's kind of a group effort.
Yeah, it's a team effort. I'd agree 100%. Well, Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. If you can just give us one little takeaway for everybody that's out there listening, what would you be able to add to make everybody better?
My takeaway is either get you or keep a growth mindset. A growth mindset will help you not only in your public safety career, but also in your life. If you stay committed to learning and growing and changing and evolving and not being too static, that will serve you well in your professional life and in your private life. And so read more books than anybody, ask people questions, and just really embrace that growth mindset. And don't let people tell you, you can't do this, you can't do that. And don't you yourself say, I'm not good at this or I'm not good at that. Human beings are amazing. And if you have the aptitude to learn, you can learn anything. And there's so much information out there. And when it comes to training, obviously, I'm hoping you all sign up for all of our classes, because I own a training company. That's what I want to do. But to be honest, you can get a lot of training on your own without me. And there's podcasts you can listen to, books you can read, free articles, trade publications you can subscribe to. There's a lot of ways of getting really good training that doesn't involve going to a formal training class. And that's coming from a guy that owns a training company. But while I'd love to welcome into all of our classes, if you've got a growth mindset and a little bit of creativity, you can get and sort of design your own training that will cost you very little.
Yeah. Make your career what you want and don't expect somebody else to always make it for you. So that's awesome. That is cool. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you coming on, and it's been nothing but a pleasure having you here. Absolutely honored to speak with you. And I look forward to anything else we might do together in the future, but you're always welcome back here as well. So
thanks, Ken. I'm going to take you up on that. Appreciate it.
All right. Perfect. All right. Well, Scott, you have a great day. We will talk to you after later.
And Scott Savage has left the building, so to speak. But if you, I guess this would be the part where now we get to talk about the What's a Hero podcast. And if you want to hear more from some of our other guests that we've had on here, we want to hear other podcasts, and maybe this is your first one ever listening to, because you're listening, you're a friend of Scott Savage's, or you know somebody in his circle in which, you are now listening to this episode, you can go back and you can find every prior episode we've ever had. You can find that on our website at thewhatsaheropodcast.buzzsprout.com, and you'll see every prior episode we've had on here before. You can stream it from our website. It also has links to whatever podcast platform you might listen to podcasts on. We have a portal that'll take you right to whatever one you want to listen to. You can subscribe while you're there. You can leave a review after listening to an episode. Those are great. I will personally respond to those. And if you subscribe, you download, you have it when you're going to, let's say you're going to go to a Savage Training Group training, and you got to fly there, you got to drive there, and you got to go through some place where there's just not good service, or you don't want to use your data. Download the episode, you have it for the trip. So it can't get any easier than that. If you want to download it, have it for you while you're in the gym or whatever the case is, awesome. I would support you in doing that. Nevertheless, downloads help us, and I find that it's a very nice thing to do if that's what you want to be. Nevertheless, you can also find us on all podcasts, or not podcasts, but social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can get a hold of us there. You can talk to us and ask questions, get in on the conversation, whatever it is we're talking about. Put your 2 cents in as well. I'm more than welcoming to anybody that does that. And like I said, if you're going to get a response, it's going to be directly from me. So that's cool. So like I said, check us out on social media, check out our website, listen to the podcast. So I do want to thank all of our nurses, teachers, firefighters. We might give you guys grief. We love you guys. You're our brothers. EMTs, all of our federal agencies, Border Patrol, ATF, DEA, all you guys out there that are on the front line doing the job, keeping our country safe and our way of life protected. Thank you. To our veterans out there, thank you so much for everything you guys do, keeping our country the country that it is. And to our police officers who willingly run towards the gunfire, willingly run to go help somebody, to protect other people. Thank you. You have a tough job, and it's absolutely appreciated. So, for Scott Savage and the Savage Training Group, I have been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.